Hey up me duck, it's Links Live's Natters time, where your stories come alive. From the fens to the coast. So grab a cuppa and relax with your go-to podcast for unique Lincolnshire stories.
Hello and welcome to the show. Today I'm joined by a fantastic guest, an award-winning actor, a writer who creates work about and for the people of Lincolnshire. His new show, Henry VIII Used to Hate Us, is touring this summer, and his short film, Saint Nowhere, has been making waves on the festival circuits. It's none other than Ryan Gilmartin. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Shelley. It's really exciting to be here.
Let's start with your roots. You're from Lincolnshire, born and bred. How has that shaped your work as an actor and a writer?
Do you know what? I've reflected more on this as I've got older. I think when I was younger, it was weird. So you'd go to like drama school auditions, for example, and there was this sense that I'd kind of missed out on something being from somewhere like Lincolnshire. So people would be like, "Oh, have you done National Youth Theatre?" Or, you know, you'd meet people who've been on extras on things like Emmerdale or Coronation Street, just opportunities that you don't get being from Lincolnshire. And as I got older, I kind of saw it as more of a strength. So when you're from somewhere where not a lot of things happen creatively, you know, there isn't tons of films being made here, or there's not tons of professional artists, things like that, it actually means that you've got a bit more of an appreciation of it. So I always use this metaphor of on Match of the Day, there's often this segment, and I used to watch a lot of Match of the Day as a kid.
Oh, he's a football boy.
a little bit. And what they do is, you know, so like Chelsea would go into their local primary school, and you had like, I don't know, whoever, let's say Cristiano Ronaldo, when he was big at Man United, would come into the primary school, and I'd be like, oh, like, I just kind of thought that would happen. I thought someone would come to my Lincolnshire primary school and it'd be like David Beckham. And obviously didn't happen. And you kind of realise, you know, there's many reasons behind that. But what it means is that when you kind of get really astute at like how to create things that have a bit of impact, like genuine impact, because we don't get a lot of things happening here. So when they do happen, I try and make sure that they're really tangible. I always talk about, you know, when someone announces a new statue or they build a piece of public art, I always say, well, will it live up to that rainy Wednesday 2 years later? So once the bunting's gone and the mayor's gone and there's no other context around that piece of art, does it still make sense? Do I get it? Does it still have an impact? And I think a lot about that with work. So yeah, being from an area where there isn't a lot happening, it means that you want to create something that is really tangible for people and that they really have a connection with or is moving in some way.
Do you think it's that draws you to telling stories about and for the people of Lincolnshire?
I think it's almost come from my experience, you know, like I never, just to clarify for everyone, like I didn't used to be into Lincolnshire history really. My granddad was in the RAF. He repaired the radios during World War II, and he was quite into local history. Like he did have some books, and he was part of a veterans group that would go on like bombing ranges and Holbeach Marsh and do little trips. But as like an 11-year-old, I didn't really care. Wasn't really interested.
You never do you? As a kid, you don't realise what rich heritage you actually have until you get into adulthood and you think, wow, I had all that wealth of information.
Yeah, and Yeah. And he passed kind of when I was 11, so that kind of connection was lost. However, there's something really beautiful where my mum has dug out his old books now. So there's one that it's called like The History of the Fens, and it's written to him. So it's from like 1954, and it says, you know,
wow, what a legacy, Ryan.
Yeah, it's really beautiful to kind of almost connect with him across the years by reading that book. So it was only when I went to drama school and I met other people from across the country who did have a sense of where they were from. So whether it's someone from Yorkshire who knows Yorkshire has an unofficial anthem called On Ilkley Moor Bar Tat.
Oh, I know that. I have relatives in Yorkshire, and they don't live very far from there either.
Or people call like alleyways ginnels, or they have different words for bread rolls. And I really was like, I didn't know what it meant to be from Lincolnshire. I said, oh, you know, you'd walk around Tesco's and yes, there'd be Lincolnshire sausages. And I was like, that's all I've got to feel a connection. And I did feel a bit of a gap. I felt like, I think first of all, I laughed it off it didn't really matter where I was from, you know, I'm from near Peterborough or from 100 miles from London. But I was like, as I went through my time at drama school, it became this like bigger hole that I wanted to fill. I wanted to know where I was from. And I think I jumped on YouTube, and then from there kind of started reading local history books. And I'm sure you know if you read them, that they'll kind of reference somebody else's book. So it'll be like, oh, in so and so's book about the Fens, you're like, oh right, I'll read that one next, and it just kind of snowballs. And now I've kind of the impact of that is I've got a real sense of where I'm from, and it's been awesome. And what I'm trying to do with the work about Lincolnshire is help other people feel that sense of community too. Because I always say, like, everyone's from somewhere.
Yeah, I think that's why I started the podcast, really, Ryan, because there's so much rich history here that people, when you talk to them, when I've been at events in London or back down south, because obviously I'm not, dare I say, I'm not from Lincolnshire, but I love living here because there is so, like you said, the tapestry of the county, the richness of the people, there is so much here. And also, I've learned the term yellow belly. I did some history searching into the term yellow belly, and it's quite interesting to know what that term yellow belly means.
Well, can you tell me, because there's a few different versions, Shelley, so which one kind of sticks in your head?
Well, there's a fun one. The fun one which is about the frogs and the toads from parts of the fen, that they had yellow underbellies. That's the fun one I've heard.
I like that.
And the other one was the Lincolnshire. I can't think of the name of the group of army, but the army that was based in Lincolnshire, they always wore yellow waistcoats, which was a bit of a problem when they're on the battlefield, that they would be seen because they're in yellow waistcoats, but there was a whole list of things, to say why. And the other one was the farmers working in the fields when they were shirtless, and they were working in mustard fields. And because they're working in mustard field, they get the yellow hue off the mustard seeds. That's another one. But it's all sort of down to folklore, and you're thinking, well, is this true or isn't this true? It's those old fables. It's like, you'd like to think they were true. And you'd like to think in the fens there is a toad or a frog with a yellow belly.
You touch on a great point there, Shelley, about, as more people are moving into the area, and I think that's a good thing. They might be coming from London or down south or wherever. And obviously when you move somewhere, you want to know a bit more about the area, what it was. And so I think if we as locals or newbies can kind of really work on what it is, what it means to be from here, it helps everyone integrate. Because I think, more and more there's going to be more of a demand to have a sense of, like, what is this? And like I said, we all have a history. It's often buried under the ground a little bit, and you just have to kind of dig it up. And you don't have to adopt someone else's history. And I think what I used to love about Lincolnshire history is that, we were quite a uniquely independent place, because of the landscape, but also, like in the play Henry VIII, like we used to annoy a lot of people. We were very stubborn, and we were fighters. And you go, oh, that's cool. Like, I'll have a bit of that. I'll keep a bit of that, and I'll carry it in me, kind of thing. So I think it can help create that sense of identity and personality.
You've had an impressive career so far. What's been the most rewarding for you?
It can both be big and small, the rewardingness. Like some moments that are quite small but really meaningful to me has been like when you get people come to your events. So I've done 4 Arts Council projects now since 2018, and I've got memories of, like, it was a real struggle at first to get people to come to find about what I was doing and also come along. So me and my collaborator at the time, we were in the South Holland Centre. We were putting on a little workshop for some young people. There was going to be free pizza. Great. Goes in the local paper. We sit there and no one comes. So we sat there for like 20 minutes, and it was painful, because I'm from the area. It can feel like much more of a personal rejection when people don't come to your events, especially when, you're trying to do something because there's not much else going on. However, we then went to Wetherspoons and basically took what we do in the workshop and did it there. And it got me onto this whole method that I'm doing now of going to where people already hang out, going to where they're familiar with, where they're used. So there's less kind of what we call barriers to someone taking part. So recently in December, I did an event for basically anyone who works with young people in Lincolnshire, South Lincolnshire. So teachers, youth workers, carers, home education. And we had like 20 people come to Sheddy's, which is a fish and chip shop in Spalding. And that was amazing. That felt like, that was awesome.
A fish and chip shop?
yeah. So they've got a little restaurant, and I held like a workshop up there. So that was very rewarding. And of course, when you do the more national stuff, so when the film was going around film festivals, it is really moving to just get the Lincolnshire landscape up on a screen and kind of show what it's all about and show how beautiful the place is, and just help get it in front of more people. So it's cool doing the bigger stuff, but it's also really meaningful when people come to your event more locally as well.
Let's talk about your new show, Henry VIII Used to Hate Us. It's touring Lincolnshire this summer. What's the story behind that one?
It's a bit like what I said earlier. It's a culmination of, pretty much from me being 21 to now, all that reading of local history. It's a culmination of that. So we've whittled down those stories. So there was probably originally maybe 10 or 12 stories I wanted to tell, Lincolnshire stories, and I've whittled them down to about 4. I did some workshops with the community, kind of saying, right, which ones interest you? Which ones would you want to know more about? And so yeah, what we've whittled it down to, and some of your listeners might be familiar with some of these, and some of them might be a bit newer for people. So we've got Henry VIII, and kind of why does he hate, why did he hate Lincolnshire? A bit of background.
Why did he hate Lincolnshire?
There's a whole thing called the Lincoln Uprising, which briefly featured in Wolf Hall. If you've watched the final season of Wolf Hall, we really annoyed him, to be honest with you. Like I said, we were stubborn, independent, and we did such a good job. He described us as the most brute and beastly county in the realm, which I think people today think Lincolnshire is like, oh, it's nothing, isn't it? It's just a boring, normal place. It's like we managed to annoy a king so much that he said we're his least favourite county, which I take as a source of pride. But yeah, that was all about a thing called the Lincoln Uprising, which was it was quite sad. It was obviously the Reformation, which was Henry VIII kind of shutting down the monasteries, taking a lot of the money out of it. And people often kept their treasures. In the same way you'd put money in a bank today, it was a bit like that. So if you had anything for safekeeping, maybe a nice little bit of something like a hand-me-down, something like that, you put it in the church. And people were worried that with Henry VIII taking over the churches, that they would lose those hand-me-downs that had been in their families. So actually that's what triggered this protest. And it grew and it grew. Kind of started off kind of central Lincolnshire, so kind of Horncastle and Louth, and it travelled all the way to kind of Lincoln Cathedral. And actually they took over Lincoln Cathedral for a few days. And it was looking pretty dicey, and it kind of ended sadly. As a lot of you'll learn when you do Lincolnshire history, we have these kind of moments. We have this revolt or revolution. We fail, but then we try again. We try again in 50.
We keep going, Ryan.
There's a fight. Yeah, there's a sense of fighting. There's a story about Hereward the Wake, so a little bit south. kind of more in that kind of Fens area about him. We've got a story about St Guthlac and St Pegah from Crowland.
Pardon?
Yeah,
that's a bit of a mouthful.
Yeah, St Guthlac is quite well known. He's in the British Library. There's this thing called the Guthlac Roll, whereas his sister's kind of quite forgotten. But actually, we look through that story with modern eyes, and we're like, well, both of them chose Crowland, which at the time was really just a wasteland, and yet he's remembered and she isn't, which we thought was very interesting about kind of how's history remembered and the role of women in histories. And then the last story that we tell is our area had the highest use of opium outside of London for many years because of malaria and because of the marsh. So that's the one people know the least about. And so we kind of talk about that as a story. So they're the 4 stories that are in the show. And also around it, you've got Lincolnshire folk music. So we've got 2 incredible folk musicians. Both of them have featured on like the Hobbit soundtrack. They often write music for the BBC and Sky and Netflix. So they're incredible folk musicians in their own right. They've gone and found like Lincolnshire kind of sheet music, so old Lincolnshire folk tales, and kind of learnt them and brought them to life. So you can hear them in the show. We've got some local food that we're going to be offering. So Lincolnshire poacher cheese and Lincolnshire plum bread.
We're big fans in this house. Well, more my other half actually, who's into Lincolnshire poacher, because it's whenever if I say, oh, shall we go to Woodhall Spa? And I said, no, we're not going to that shop.
Yeah, it's beautiful stuff. And do you know what? It was weird. Like, it's another example of kind of this Lincolnshire identity and maybe how we as a community needs to do a better job of telling our own story. Now, weirdly, it sounds like a cheese that's been going for years, but it actually was only created in 1992. However, I'd grown up in Spalding all my life and never had Lincolnshire poacher cheese. It was only when I went to Manchester, and in Lincolnshire poacher cheese, you'll normally find it, especially outside of the county, in like delicatessens, quite high-end cheese shops. It isn't the kind of cheese you can buy in your Tesco's or maybe the Co-op sell it sometimes. But I was like, why are we in Lincolnshire not getting a Lincolnshire product? Why are we not able to easily find it? So, and I think it tastes great, as I'm sure your other half can attest as well.
Yes, because once tried, it's then like, oh, where can I get it? Where can I get it? Awesome. Where can I get it?
Yeah, it's kind of like nutty, cheddary, cheddary, nutty taste. But when you get it on the plum bread as well with a bit of butter, I had it for the first time in a cheese society in Lincoln, and I was blown away. And I was like, this is awesome. It's got to be in the show. So yes, there's food. local music and obviously local stories and folklore. So that's what people can expect in the show.
Yeah, it sounds like the show's going to be amazing. You know, there's some drama, there's comedy, anything unexpected that we wouldn't expect to be in that show.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. So the show is you'll be sat either in like a big circle or you'll be sat almost on either side. So it feels more like the atmosphere at a small gig. So it'll feel intimate. I talk to the audience. Often what we do at the start of the show is I go and ask some people the history behind their names. So I'm trying to find the personal history. You know, we all have little bits of history in our lives. And, you know, so straight away at the top of the show, I'm trying to set that tone of like, this show's relevant to you. You know, it's got, you know, and these things need to be carried on. And sometimes you get people who don't know the history of their names. And often you get another audience member will tell that person what they've heard about their name. And that's really beautiful, that kind of sharing of history.
Yeah, you said about the venue, you know, where is the venue for you and why have you chosen this particular venue?
We're touring to 8 different locations, and a bit like I said earlier on about it all comes from that first failure almost of being in the South Holland Centre, waiting for people to come. And that's now we do all our work in places that people know of. So, you know, I'm doing a youth group at the moment in Spalding, and we meet in Costa Coffee, or we do projects in Wetherspoons, or I did a photography project that popped up in Lincolnshire Co-op, Long Sutton Co-op. And so we're doing this with the tour. We're taking those lessons from the tour. So we go into a brewery. So we're going to Cat's Island Brewery in Newark, which I'm really excited about. We're going to a football club. We're going to a food market in Grimsby. So they're all, I suppose, almost community venues. So these are not theatres. They're places that already have a following, a Facebook page. People kind of already, we're going to Tattershall Castle in Coningsby.
That'll be amazing.
Yeah, so it's quite a mix of venues, but that was on purpose. Yes, they're already places that people know, are familiar with, and are just naturally a bit more informal. So this show, it happens all on one level. I'm not on a stage. I'm not really in costume. It's just it's all about that connection between me and you and trying to get you into this local history, get you inspired and kind of really, really hit you in the heart with it. So that's why we're stripping all the gubbins away and going to these venues.
It's almost like those it's almost like those old-fashioned times where people would stand in the marketplaces and tell their stories, isn't it?
Yeah. So yeah, it's like on YouTube, there's this beautiful recording of a folk duo playing Will You Go Lassie Go, or Wild Mountain Time, as some people might know it. And it's in this pub. And when I first saw it a couple of years ago, as I was kind of developing the show, I sent it to the musicians and said, this is what I want the show to feel like. So, you know, there's candles and it's really like cozy. And the musicians asked the audience to sing along with them. We do have some singing in the show as well. So that is, yeah, you're right. It's that kind of like we're all in this room together and it's very intimate.
At the Thrive Tribe, we believe everyone deserves the chance to soar. Whether you're an individual seeking self-improvement or a business aiming for success, we've got you covered. Personalised coaching. Unlock your potential with our expert coaches. One-on-one guidance tailored to your unique goals. Learn flexibly online. Boost your skills from Microsoft Office mastery to work-based expertise. Lifelong learning? We've got the keys. So whether you're an aspiring professional, a business leader, or simply hungry for growth, join the Thrive Tribe today. Visit thethrivetribe.com and let's ignite your journey. Remember, it's not just about surviving, it's about thriving. The Thrive Tribe, where potential meets possibility.
Hey there, Lincolnshire business owners. Struggling to be found online? Still buried on page 3 of Google? Wondering if anyone's even looking? Well, stop stressing and join the Lincolnshire Business Directory. It's completely free to join and you'll finally start getting noticed. Think of it like shouting from the hilltops, but digitally. Want to really make a splash? For just £99, you can upgrade to a premium listing and get in front of more eyes. You'll be the talk of the town. It's super easy. Pick a plan, create your listing, and boom, you're live. Customers will be finding you faster than you can say SEO. Head to www.lincolnshirebusinessdirectory.co.uk. Don't miss out. Your customers are waiting.
Let's go on to something else. Let's talk about your film work and the Saint Nowhere film. Tell me what that's all about, because that was shot in Lincolnshire as well, wasn't it?
It was, yeah, and this all links. So it's like I said earlier about my granddad. You know, it's set on a marsh that he used to go to quite a lot with his RAF veterans group, which is some people know it as a place called Shep White's, some people know it as Holbeach Marsh. When I describe this to people outside of the county, Shelley, they always laugh. And you'll know, especially coming from Lincoln itself, where there's slightly more of that kind of military background. Holbeach Marsh is both an RAF bombing range and a nature reserve.
Yes, it is.
Which I think is very Lincolnshire, that these two things.
We have a few places like that, Ryan, though, don't we, in Lincolnshire, that are nature reserves and bombing ranges at the same time, especially on the coast as well, don't we?
Yeah, so this is what it is. It's like a kind of tidal marsh. And the name Sent Nowhere, I was playing with a few ideas, but it kind of comes from, especially kind of near I'm from, Holbeach Way, there's a lot of really small villages. I'm sure you have it in the other parts of Lincolnshire where it'll be like, so, Saint something. It'd be really, so there's like a Holbeach St Mark's and a Holbeach St John's, and these are almost like hamlets, and for me, in my family, they're a shorthand for kind of saying they're out in the sticks. And so that this idea of like sent nowhere, like it's so remote, it could be sent so and so, and it doesn't matter. But also that it's a play on words of like sent nowhere, so SENT. The story is about a newcomer. It's a very common story. Someone moves to the area, and she has a different way with interacting with the landscape. Often people who live in cities, I think what's amazing about being in a city sometimes, you can be invisible, right? You can kind of go about your business and people aren't really going to challenge you or question stuff. And, I was like, well, what happens if you take someone like that and they've recently been kind of sent nowhere? They've come to this kind of rural place, and the way they're interacting clashes with someone who's local, which
what
also...
an amazing play on words, Ryan.
Oh, thanks, Shelley. I am a writer.
Yes, you are. Oh, Ryan, it is brilliant and stuff. And also, it got a very special accolade, didn't it?
Yeah, we managed to go to five film festivals, and it was kind of strange. It was kind of a real perfect balance. So, ironically, we got featured at 2 Manchester-based film festivals. So, one of them was Manchester International Festival, and we also got featured at 2 film festivals in Suffolk, which is
my home county.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful. So that beautiful mix of like rural and urban. It was interesting that that's where it ended up. And I've got some exclusive news for you, Shelley, is we're
especially on the Links Life Natters podcast. Thank you very much, Ryan.
So I can tell everyone that for a long time I was sharing it on social media and people said, are you going to do a local screening? When is it happening? And I was like, well, if I get round to it, if the stars align and I can make it happen. I didn't, it seemed like it was going to be quite a faff to do it at my local cinema, South Holland Centre. And luckily I've just met a brilliant local artist called Daisy Smith, who has kind of moved back to the area herself. And she runs a film night that normally runs in London, but she's doing a special one in Spalding, and my film is part of that programme.
Amazing.
So it's going to be on the end of the month. So yeah, I've bagged myself a film screening without having to do any work. So I was very touched. So that's on Friday the 28th of March in Spalding. It's free.
You did start to mention this earlier on. Can you elaborate a bit more on your youth work, your young people? Because it is a real passion of yours, as you mentioned earlier.
It is, and it's a chance for me to kind of give back, I suppose, and drawing from, I think I used to feel really guilty about having gone away to drama school up north. And I still work between the two places, so I kind of live in Manchester, but I do all my projects in Spalding and South Lincolnshire. And I think what makes that special is actually I can bring these bigger ideas, this inspiration. I've gone out there, I've seen how things work, and I bring some of those back. And I think if I didn't do that, I'd be doing everyone a disservice, to kind of either leave and never come back and not bring stuff back. So it's all this work I do with young people is a chance to kind of give them experiences that I'm seeing other kids in bigger places have. And it's like, why can't we give our young people the very best? It's already hard enough. They're getting less opportunities. They're in the middle of nowhere, some of them. Let's give them the very best stuff, So that it's a lot of that. And I'm not saying I'm the very best. I'm just saying I'm taking the ideas of other people or other places, kind of putting my own spin on it and kind of and running that. So an example of what I'm doing at the moment is I've created a youth board or a youth advisory group that are working on my show. So because the target audience for this show is 12 to 18-year-olds, and I know we're going to get a much broader audience in, and that's going to be awesome as well. But I really want to pass on this history to young people. I want to get them excited and having a sense of identity with this area. I think that's really important.
Because there's not really enough opportunities for young creatives in Lincolnshire, is there?
There isn't. there's different lines of attack, I think. So I've been thinking about, there's a work experience problem for sure. I was really lucky when I was younger. I managed to work with a local theatre company, and that was awesome. You know, I think some of us, to any artists who are listening, like or any creatives, we can feel like, well, the only thing that's beneficial for a young person to see is when I'm doing the thing, right? Whether it's a show or an exhibition or a screening, but no, actually, like 95% of what our daily work is, whether it's usually, you know, it's the editing the podcast, it's all the grind, it's the emails, all that work makes the 5%.
It's all the coordination, production, getting your questions done in advance.
Yeah, and I think in a way, you know, we're doing young people a disservice if they just think, you know, all they see is the end result, because actually, like, this is the work, and if you want to get a career in this is actually what it is. This is what you'll be doing 95% of the time. And actually getting to do it is the fun, but that's the relief. I don't know about you, Shall, like, you know, putting the podcast out or listening to it back, that's the bit you enjoy, you know, or that's the bit that's worth it, you know.
Is it true that you surveyed over 330 local young people?
That is, yeah. It came from, again, actually, you know, talking about taken from other places. In Manchester, the local authority there do like an annual survey of thousands of young people, and they use that data, the council use that data to kind of plan what they'll deliver. And I was like, great, how can I do that as a DIY artist? So I don't know about you, I've always found that when I respond to a survey, I'll do it if I get a chance to win something. If it's, you know, you could win an iPad or you win a voucher.
Why, as people, do we do that? As soon as somebody says, oh, I'll give you a £50 voucher, or you can have 10% off your shopping, you're automatically drawn to it, that incentive, aren't you?
I think it's just like, I think it's fair play. It's kind of saying, and also these days we're getting more and more savvy. We know actually that data is invaluable for whoever that is. And so them giving you a chance to actually basically say, I appreciate your time, here's a chance to win something, is way better than kind of this compulsory, you know, it's not a voting form, it's not a compulsory thing I have to do. So I shouldn't be like,
I don't know, it depends where you get your surveys, right?
Yeah, it's a chance to kind of give back and say, look, I appreciate your time, I don't like doing surveys either, but if you give it a go, you can win this thing. So me and this other local artist called Liz Kelleher, we kind of put together some questions of what, you know, a lot of the questions were kind of basically to help me and her of like, right, if we were to put a project together, you know, go and get some money from a funder, well, what would young people want? What would they want to come to? As we said, we're always fighting this problem of engagement, which is basically making sure, how do people come to your event? You know, so we were asking them questions like, you know, what would you most like to try? And actually, surprisingly, we did have things like business skills and life skills and cooking, but we also, and sport, but we also had things like creativity. And within that was a very broad church. We had things like painting, music making, theatre, film, photography. And actually that was like 41% of people said they want to try something creative. And then from there, like the least popular one was like sports, life skills and business, which is interesting, that thing of like, as an adult, if I asked local business leaders, they would say, well, we want to get more young people learning business skills and life skills. And actually it was interesting to go, actually, no, young people are saying they want to learn these skills.
Yeah, it's a whole different dynamic this day and age, isn't it? Because a lot of people want to go into media because they are obviously heavily influenced by what the media are putting out there.
And I think it's more accessible now. You know, like I said, you really can be in your bedroom in Lincolnshire, in the middle of nowhere, and making content. You know, you don't.
Oh yes,
and that's great, and that's awesome. Shelley, can you, on the survey, I asked people what's the art form they'd most like to try, but also least like to try. Can you?
I don't know.
Which one people said?
I don't know, but I'm sure you're going to enlighten us, Ryan.
Yeah, and do you know what? Interesting, it was music.
Yes, very heavily. People want to do music, don't they?
But also, it's the most daunting for people. Like, and what that was about. So as a kid, I wasn't lucky enough to learn an instrument as a kid. And when we said in the survey, you know, music for a lot of people is seen as something that, well, it's going to be exposing. If I'm not good at it, if I don't already know an instrument or I don't know how to sing, then I'm going to look stupid. So why would I really want to try it, but I also don't want to look stupid. And so I've learned an instrument as an adult, and I think that's been really invaluable. But that was kind of sad for me. It was very interesting about this kind of juxtaposition about opportunity. People want to give it a go, but also there's a lot of barriers, you know, embarrassment and things like that. But the survey was awesome. It kind of helped me understand what young people want more support with, what they want to do, what they want to try. And I've used that now to create this youth group that's running from kind of February till about July. But yeah, it was awesome. We didn't expect that many people to respond to the survey. Big credit to all the schools who got it out there, and the young people took part. And what we did, Shelley, we kind of went back into the schools, Because you know that classic phrase, you said we did. It's always really nice, I think, to have that feedback rather than just you feel like you're throwing your views into a void and you never hear back if they took on your idea. We went back into schools a few months later and kind of said, we presented them the results and said, this is what you guys have said. And then we also presented the vouchers to people. And that was really cool for people to kind of some people wrote really beautiful stuff. It was a mix of qualitative data, so some kind of long form answers. One of them was like, if you got £10,000, how would you spend it to improve your area? And also some of it was much more, multiple choice. And so it's been really cool. It's been like a really solid bit of data.
That's actually really interesting to see how the younger generation would spend their money.
It gave me a snapshot of when I was growing up, I was always like, I did look to kind of London and bigger cities for kind of inspiration. And, sometimes in London, you'll see like a 16-year-old who already has their own charity. And I was like, wow, like, how is that happening? And there's actually, over COVID, I did a bit of research about what creates strong communities. So when you see a community run allotment or, a cooperative supermarket, well, there's actually a lot of things, it's all called social capital that goes into behind that, building these things up. And, in an area like that's rural, you don't have a lot of what we call that social capital. So that's why you don't see these 15-year-old entrepreneurs or these 15-year-old people creating charities in Lincolnshire, because there's just not that infrastructure to develop and support them.
Yeah, it's weird how you're saying, Ryan, you sort of like when you live in a rural community, because obviously I lived in Suffolk, and we all seem to want to be drawn to London, because obviously I worked in London for a bit as well. I was drawn to the big lights as well, but it was that whole, why does London call us? Why weren't we embracing what we had around us?
And I get it. There's some industries, like I'm sure it's the same in Suffolk, you can't do every industry in Lincolnshire. We don't have that access. We don't have huge tech companies. No. So depending on what your degree is or what you want to learn, you do have to go away. But I'd really love if people come back and bring those skills back. So I understand it. I think my little contribution as an artist is hopefully people go away with a sense of where they're from, so they feel connected. Because London's weird, right? Where you go there, and I was like this when I went to drama school. You want to throw off your old self, whatever that was. You want a fresh start, but you realise London is actually already made up of people who have a sense of identity. So if you're a Londoner, they're already connected in, and actually you realise you're part of this homogenous blob of people who aren't from London, but kind of London doesn't really give you that sense of identity, because it isn't a great place to have a sense of community, I find. And then so people then really feel really stuck and really lost of like, I'm in London, I'm doing it, but I don't feel connected to my community. I don't know my neighbours. Yeah,
because I know when I used to travel home and stuff, when I'd been working in London for a big charity that I used to work for, and I get to Peterborough on the train, I'm like, yay, I'm home. It was almost like that divide for me. Peterborough was the divide, and then once I got past Peterborough, I was like, yes, I'm on my way home.
Yeah, it's a beautiful feeling. I have that kind of, there's a sign, I do a lot of driving between Manchester and Lincoln, and it's kind of just as you go past Newark, it says like you come in and you go for this kind of wooded section where it goes to 40 miles per hour. It's very specific, but anyone who drives this route will know this.
Oh yes, we know.
Right, there you go. Yeah, it goes to 40 and it says welcome to Lincolnshire. And sometimes I ring my horn, I go bam bam, and my girlfriend, she always gets very embarrassed, but I'm like, yeah, like, we're crossing that boundary. And
it's just weird. It's like when you come back off holiday as well, isn't it? You touch down at the airport and things like that. And it's like, and you suddenly realise you're in shorts and T-shirts and you touch down at the airport, don't you, Ryan, and think, I'm freezing.
And do you know what, that makes me think, you have that beautiful thing when you come off holiday. For the first few days back, you see, because you've been a tourist, you see your home with new eyes. And I think that's what, we're talking about people moving into the area, that's what they've got to contribute. So someone who's come from a different part of the UK or a different part of the world, they're going to come into Lincolnshire with these new eyes, and it's up to us to kind of be open to what they're going to say, because, we get it a lot, right? This is the work with young people as well, is, someone who's not from here will spot something really amazing. They go, oh, isn't it amazing that you have these sunsets, or, it's really quiet here, or there's no crime. And then you go, oh, is it? As a local, you're like, oh, I thought it was all bad. And you go, oh, okay, they've got something to teach me.
We live quite close to the Lincoln Edge, the Lincoln Edge sort of country walk. And you say about sunsets, you climb up the Lincoln Edge and stuff, and the sunsets are amazing. When you just sit up there and it's stuff on your doorstep, you just don't realise it's there, and it's free.
It's funny to say that. We did a research and development phase for the Henry VIII Used to Haters show in 2023. And we asked people in the show, okay, I want you to write 3 words to describe Lincolnshire or where you're from. And sunset or skies was the most common word that people used. And actually it is our natural resource.
Now let's have a bit of fun. If you could time travel and meet any historical figure from Lincolnshire, who would it be and why? Because I sense there's a few, Ryan.
Yeah, it's really tough, and actually a lot of the people who inspire me are still alive, luckily. So whether it's someone like Jim Broadbent, but if I was to choose, obviously, Tennyson is from Lincolnshire, but there's someone who in my research for Sent Nowhere was really interesting figure. He was called Kenzie Thorpe, and he's a wildfowler, someone who kind of hunts wild birds, essentially. Sometimes you're shooting them, some of these different ways. And obviously when this area, the Fens, was a lot more wet, a lot more people did it. But there are wildfowling groups. And so I was researching about wildfowlers for Sent Nowhere, because one of the characters kind of wants to be a wildfowler, wants to follow in his granddad's footsteps. And I came across this incredible guy who used to live on Holbeach Marsh, or Shep White's, called Kenzie Thorpe. Kenzie was part of the travellers community. And in the kind of 50s, 60s and 70s, he was probably like a bit of an export. Like there's been some old like Granada News documentaries about him. It's all black and white, and he's in his home in kind of Long Sutton, and it kind of follows him as he leaves his house and goes out onto these marshes. And people would come from all over the UK to kind of be almost like mentored by him. It'd be like you and him going out on the marsh at 5 a.m. or whatever. And what's ironic is, he started off shooting birds, but also he was a brilliant painter. So he painted these beautiful pictures of the birds that he used to shoot, so that beautiful duality of like, he was hunting birds, but he also had that reverence and respect for nature and the birds as well, which I think is quite beautiful. And again, I think we go, well, that's quite poetic for Lincolnshire, but that's, this is a normal salt of the earth guy who also had this great art practice and really used that to connect to where he's from. And I think if we can have more people like that who are really openly like, yes, I'm a working person, but I'm also, I'm very moved by where I live or what I feel connected to. So yeah, Kenzie.
Yeah, that's why I kind of started the podcast, because there is so many, talented people here that do need a voice, Ryan.
And also, like, we can, I understand not everyone wants to be an artist or can be an artist, but we can help them feel seen. So when I put, the Lincolnshire landscape on a film screen, you go, yeah, I've been there, and just having that reflected back to you, I think, does wonders.
Yeah. And finally, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received in your career?
It changes all the time. It really does. Like, the bit that sticks with me will change from year to year. I think when I was younger, I was really fixed. And this is probably great advice for anyone who wants to get into the creative industries, is that the creative industries are not like other industries. There isn't a set career path. It's, and
there's no set hours either, is there?
True. And so, yeah, we've got, you have to kind of set your own hours and take control of that. But the biggest bit of advice I'd probably say is it's not going to be like other industries, and you have to have faith in that, your own path and your own interests, that your best piece of work or the best thing that will help you get the next job is the thing you're doing right now. So if you do a really good job at that thing, people will see it and notice it and go, oh, I saw you did that for this, could you come do that for us? So yeah, to someone who's listening, maybe a little bit younger, is like, this is not a LinkedIn kind of career. Like, you won't be celebrating your achievements on LinkedIn, and you won't be seamlessly going from, I was the junior so-and-so at this company, and now I'm the executive director. There isn't that path. So yeah, the sooner you get that and understand that. I think I used to try and copy other people's career stretches. Like, oh, okay, so they started off writing for theatre, and then they did this, and then by 30 they were, with the BBC. It's just because we as a creative, like, you are the thing, you are, and we're all individuals. So the reason why someone gets a job and someone doesn't might be because of you're a woman or a man, or you're from Lincolnshire or you're not from Lincolnshire, and all those things that you can't control are often the reasons why one person does one opportunity, but also you yourself might get unique opportunities based off who you are. So that's what I'd say. Yeah, so both advice to other people, also the best advice I've got so far is probably that.
Oh, brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. It's been fantastic having you on the show. So thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks, Shelley. Your questions are amazing. I've got to say, anyone who's thinking of coming on the show, Shelley asks very personal.
Oh, thank you, Ryan. You brought a tear to my eye then. Thank you so much, because that means so much. That's a wrap on today's Links Live Natters podcast. My thanks go to Ryan Gilmartin for nattering for us. We will put all the links to Ryan's social media on ours if anybody's interested in going to see his play, Henry VIII Used to Hate Us. Anyway, my thanks go to my technical team for doing all the technical bits. We'll be back with another great episode of the Links Lives Natters podcast soon.